In 1931, a fishing trawler was working in the North Sea in an area known as Dogger Bank. It's kind of an undersea raised formation that's about halfway between Britain and Denmark. It's a popular spot for fishing because the water's shallower there, and it's actually how it got its name. A dogger is a type of Danish fishing boat. Anyway, on this one particular fishing trip, they were trawling a little bit too low, and they wound up scraping up the seafloor and pulled some of that seafloor up onto their boat. And as they were digging all of that seafloor junk out of their nets, they realized that what they actually had, what they had dug up underneath the sediment, was peat. Now this is weird right away because peat is a nutrient-dense organic soil that's made from like decomposing plant matter over thousands of years, which suggests that there was once, dense vegetation there. But that's not what you would expect at the bottom of the ocean. Even weirder was that mixed in with that peat, they found this. A stone-aged barbed hunting spear made out of antler bone. What was this doing in the middle of the ocean? Was it dropped off a Stone-Age boat? Did Stone-Age boats even exist? So to get some clarity on this, they dug up a little bit more peat from that same area and they analyzed it, and what they found was grains of pollen that suggested that the area was once a mixed woodland. In other words, it used to be dry land. Dry land with people living on it. Yeah, so what happened? To say that the world used to be different is the most obvious statement ever made. I mean, of course, continents have shifted and changed over time. South America used to be spooned up against Africa in a giant continental orgy we call Pangea. Ooh, naughty geology. Hell, fossils of sea creatures have been found right here in my backyard in North Texas because back in the Cretaceous, there was an ocean here. It was called the Western Interior Seaway. But these are things that take place over geologic time, hundreds of thousands, even millions of years. The idea this could happen in the span of human history, and fairly recent human history at that, is kind of mind-boggling. And yet that's exactly what happened in this area of the North Sea that was once inhabited land, an area we now call Doggerland. So what caused this to happen? Well, the short answer is it's the same thing that killed the dinosaurs, according to Batman and Robin.
What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age!
Terrible pun. Even worse science. No, the Ice Age didn't kill the dinosaurs, but it did lower sea levels all around the world. And this changed the map in a lot of ways. In Australia, it gave it this nice little peninsula that merged with Papua New Guinea. Just northwest of there, Vietnam and Cambodia merged with Indonesia and Brunei to create this giant landmass bigger than India today. Speaking of India, it once had a peninsula where the island of Sri Lanka is now. Saudi Arabia was merged with Iran with no Persian Gulf in between them. And perhaps most famously, a land bridge formed over the Bering Strait, connecting the eastern and western hemispheres, allowing animals and humans to migrate into North America. And in northern Europe, the British Isles merged with the mainland, forming this region that we're talking about today. The reason for this drop in sea levels was, of course, the massive ice sheets that formed over the northern hemisphere during the late glacial maximum. This was a period where just incomprehensibly large mile-high glaciers began creeping down from the Arctic starting about 33,000 years ago, reaching their peak around 25,000 years ago and finally retreating around 14,000 years ago. It's thought that 8% of the Earth's surface was covered in this thick ice, and sea levels dropped 125 meters. All because the average temperature dropped by 6 degrees Celsius. Now, I've been calling this the late glacial maximum. It's also sometimes called the last glacial maximum, because this is not the only time it's happened. It's actually happened a lot over the years. From about 800,000 to 500,000 years ago, there was the Cromerian stage, followed by the Elster Ice Age about 450 to 300,000 years ago. This was when Neanderthals and Homo heidelbergensis entered the scene, leaving behind flint rocks and wooden spears that had been found all over northern Europe, including Doggerland. This was followed by the Saline glaciation from 300,000 years ago to about 150,000 years ago. Then the Earth had a warming cycle called the Eemian period that started about 120,000 years ago. This caused ocean levels to rise by 9 meters and put Doggerland back underwater. This would actually happen several times. It would be inhabited, and then it would flood, and then dry and inhabited, just over and over again. The last of these glacial periods was the Weishelian glaciation. I think I'm saying that right anyway. This began 115,000 years ago, and it would last until about 12,000 years ago. This was the period that encompassed the last glacial maximum that I've been talking about, and this would bring an end to the Pleistocene age. It was also when we, Homo sapiens, human beings, came on the scene in northern Europe around 40,000 years ago. The Pleistocene actually kind of ended with a bit of a last hurrah. There was a warming period from about 14,690 to 12,890 years ago. It's called the Boiling Allerod Interstadial, and that was followed by the Younger Dryas, which was a rapid cooling period between 12,900 and 11,700 years ago. And this is when the temperatures leveled off into the Holocene period, which is what we're living in today. Now, that was a lot of history to cover in a very small amount of time, so a ton got left out of that, but it brings us to what you might call now the golden years of Doggerland. Before the glaciers truly melted away and the seas rose again, Doggerland was a kind of a lush woodland, populated by mammoths, bison, reindeer, and horses, and some more surprising animals like lions and hyenas. Yeah, this was like a Golden Corral all-you-can-eat buffet for the humans in the area, and to just put this into perspective, the pyramids of Giza wouldn't be built for another 9,000 years. Not only was hunting plentiful, but fishing was relatively easy, and it boasted a slurry of tree species like oak, hazel, birch, pine, and juniper. And the people who lived in Doggerland at this time, today we know them as the Arensberg civilization. They were a hunter-gatherer group that emerged after the climate shifts kind of caused a change in ecosystems. Arensberg items have been found in Denmark, Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium, North France, and eastern England, and it's thought that Doggerland might have been especially popular during the winter during the migration of reindeer. And they found similar barbed spears like the ones they found on Dogger Bank and other Arensberg settlements around Europe. They were a group of nomadic tribes, so they didn't like set up cities in Doggerland or anything like that, which is a good thing, because as we already know, Doggerland's days were numbered. As the glaciers continued to melt and the water slowly rose, much of Doggerland became kind of marshy wetlands, which still makes for some pretty good hunting grounds for humans, especially because it kept other predators out like saber-toothed cats. Cats don't like to get wet, even back then. Now the Dogger Bank area was higher in elevation, so it was probably still more dry and woody. But then around 9,000 years ago, an event took place on the other side of the world that pretty much sealed its fate. Over in North America, as the Laurentide ice sheet melted and receded northwards, it left behind a massive lake just to the northwest of our current Great Lakes called Lake Agassiz. Lake Agassiz was insanely huge. Like, it's bigger than all the Great Lakes combined. It covered 440,000 square kilometers, larger than any currently existing lake today and similar in size to the Black Sea. And all of that water was being held back by ice dams that eventually broke. It's not completely clear which direction this water went. Some think it went up through the Mackenzie Valley in Canada, some through the St. Lawrence River Valley, some think it just dumped right into the Hudson Bay. Or maybe all three. But when all this water spilled into the ocean and made its way around the world, the ocean levels around the world rose practically overnight. And most of Doggerland went under the water. And Dogger Bank became Dogger Island. Some actually suggest that the Lake Agassiz event might be the source of all the flood myths from all around the ancient world, because it did raise ocean levels everywhere. And just like today, people back then used to settle along coastlines. It's likely a lot of settlements got wiped out, including Doggerland. But this isn't why Doggerland is sometimes called the Atlantis of the North Sea. Now, at this point, Dogger Island still remained, along with a small land bridge connecting Britain to the mainland. And Dogger Island wasn't small, it was 23,000 square kilometers, roughly the size of Sardinia. By the way, fun fact, this is the same area where they found the world's oldest boat. A canoe was found that was dated to be around 7750 BCE, so it is possible people could have even traveled to it. Now, it was another event that has led some people to call it Atlantis. Around 6200 BCE, so about 8,200 years ago, the North Sea was hit with a series of massive tsunamis that was caused by the Storegga Slide. This might sound like a dance you might do at a cousin's wedding, but the Storegga Slide was an underwater landslide that occurred when a massive chunk of the continental shelf broke off. It displaced 3,500 cubic meters of debris. That's 840 cubic miles. That's basically like if an asteroid 9.5 miles wide dropped into the North Sea. Experts suggest that this mega tsunami wiped out both the remaining land bridge and Dogger Island, effectively wiping out any civilizations that might have remained there and separating Britain from mainland Europe. You might call it the first Brexit. Now, to the best of our knowledge, any civilization that might have still been hanging around on Dogger Island were probably hunter-gatherers, so the idea that an advanced and powerful civilization got wiped out, like in the Atlantis myth, is probably a non-starter. But it was an inhabited island that literally sank into the ocean in a cataclysmic event. Now, of course, nothing in science is that cut and dried. There is evidence to show that this happened, like the distribution of sand and clay in the area. But other findings based off of sediment cores suggest that it might have remained above water for several hundred years after the tsunami. But investigations continue around Dogger Bank to learn more about what was lost all those years ago. Everything from lions to woolly mammoths to dozens more spear tips and tools. As of right now, the youngest artifact found was from 6050 BCE. Now, ironically, plans are in the works to use Dogger Bank to install an offshore wind farm, including a floating artificial island in the same place that a real island used to be. And kind of double ironically, the whole point of a wind farm is to help reduce the very kind of sea level rise that doomed it in the first place. It's a big project, but there's an even bigger project that's being discussed that could actually bring Dogger Island back. I mean, it's unlikely, but maybe? Because of rising sea levels and cities like Amsterdam being under threat, there have been some proposals to put a dam across the entire North Sea and English Channel. The plan is to extend a dam from Scotland and the Shetland Islands across to Norway and from the southwest of England to the northwest of France. This is being called the North European Enclosure Dam, and it would not just protect the North Sea, but also the Baltic Sea and all the cities that lie on that coast. It would be a mega project, to say the least. The total length would be 657 kilometers, and just for reference, the longest bridge in the world is 165 kilometers. Estimates say that it could cost up to $500 billion, but it would protect the livelihoods and property of over 25 million people, and probably prevent many times that cost in damages. And I mean, hey, if they really want to get crazy with it, maybe they could pump enough water out of it to bring Dogger Island back, and then discover all the secrets it holds. Again, not likely, but it's an interesting thought. And I mean, I think it'd be cool to, learn more about the people who lived on Dogger Island. It's easy to kind of just blow it off and say like, they were Stone Age hunter-gatherers. But I mean, keep in mind, they were artists painting on cave walls going back 30,000 years. Like one of the favorite things that I saw when I was in Ireland were the stone circles and monuments and tombs dating back 6,000 years. These were mature civilizations with rituals and religions and understanding of astronomy. They might not have been Atlantis, but they were significant. And also, since they lived on islands, that isolation probably created very distinct cultures that now have been completely lost to the sea. Much like Ireland and Britain developed distinct cultures over thousands of years, even though they were, right next to each other. And this clash of cultures actually led to a catastrophe of its own that was threatening to wipe out Irish culture. This one, however, was completely man-made. The Irish famine of the late 1840s was not the same as what happened on Doggerland. No tsunami was involved, but an argument could be made that it was the most devastating disaster that occurred in that area since Dogger Island was wiped away. It was by far the biggest loss of life in that area. I mean, we have no way of knowing how many people were on Dogger Island when it went down, but it was undoubtedly less than the millions of people who literally starved to death between the years of 1846 and 1849. And it was entirely preventable, which is why I made an entire video about it over on Nebula for my Forgotten Atrocities series. In it, we take a deep dive into the political turmoil between Britain and Ireland that set the stage for the famine, the potato blight that wiped out crops throughout Ireland and all over Europe for that matter, and the horrific starvation conditions that occurred because of it. It's definitely something that would need to be watered down for YouTube to be okay with it, but this is on Nebula, so yeah, it's dry as a bone. That doesn't sound right. It's salacious. Salacious as a bone. It's riveting, anyway. It's riveting content that you can only find on Nebula. Nebula is a streaming platform that I'm a part of, along with many of your favorite smart YouTubers. We can see all of our videos early and ad-free, so for example, this video on Nebula doesn't have this silly ad read in it. It's also the home of Nebula originals like my Forgotten Atrocities series that I just mentioned, also my Mysteries of the Human Body series, and there's also Nebula classes now where you can learn skills that matter to you from your favorite online creators. I mean, think of it as a curated list of awesome educational content designed by your favorite YouTubers. And the best part is you get it completely for free when you sign up with CuriosityStream. CuriosityStream, of course, is the best streaming platform for documentary content in the universe, with thousands of titles from award-winning filmmakers from all around the world covering science, history, art, you name it. Like if prehistoric people are interesting to you, you might want to check out the Prehistoric Astronomers show that goes into depth about just how knowledgeable people were about the stars even thousands of years ago. Anyway, it's the best streaming bundle you can possibly find on planet Earth, and if you go to my custom URL, curiositystream.com/joescott, you can get 26% off a yearly subscription that gives you a grand total of $14.79 for an entire year for 2 streaming services. And I can vouch for both of them. I watch them both all the time. Like, I've actually gotten to where I watch Nebula almost more than I watch YouTube because pretty much everybody that I follow is there anyway, so I know I'm not going to miss anything from them. So if you haven't checked it out, go give it a look. Again, it's curiositystream.com/joescott. Links down below. All right, big thanks to CuriosityStream for supporting this video, and a huge shout out to the Answer Files on Patreon that are forming an awesome community, supporting the channel, and being a great soundboard for me. I love these guys. There's some new names I need to shout out real quick. We've got Emily Shepard Antonson, Clyde McDonald, Curtis Odom, Romeo Loves DBZ at AskJeeves.com. Okay. Knick Get Right, Olivia Bungray, Lunday Harshan, QC, Sean F., Riley Mobley, Lionel Sleeper, Robert Kral, Vladimir Starkov, Joshua Hodges, Onyavid Skovball, love the Norwegians, Andre Peach, Megan Betts, Jean-Claude Labbe, Jonathan Fagerland, and Brian. Thank you guys so much. If you would like to join them, get early access to videos, and just become part of a really awesome community, just go to patreon.com/answerswithjoe. Please do like and share this video if you liked it, and if this is your first time here, you might want to check this video out because Google thinks you'll find that interesting, or find any of the others if you're watching on your browser that have my little face in the thumbnails. And if you enjoy them, I do invite you to subscribe. I come back with videos every Monday. By the way, real quick before I close, if you're really into the Doggerland thing and you want to learn more about it, there is an Instagram page for people who are researching Doggerland. I'll put a link to it down in the description. Anyway, thanks again for watching. Now go out there, have an eye-opening rest of the week, stay safe, and I'll see you next Monday. Love you guys. Take care.